Imagine you're stranded on a lonely island in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean. An island with no people, no birds, no signs of life. Just a crumbling lighthouse, a deserted cabin, and whispers of something lurking out there in the dark. Now, picture this. It's your job to live there, alone, for an entire year. Scary, right? But for David, a young weather officer, this wasn't just a nightmare. It was his job, and soon it would become a fight for his survival. How? Let's find out in this video. Our story begins with a team of explorers in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean. On board is David, a weather officer tasked with a year-long mission: observe the changing climate on a remote, isolated island. The government sent him here to collect a full year's worth of weather data, providing him with all the food and supplies he'd need. After a long journey, they finally reached the island. It was completely deserted, not even a bird in sight. The only structures were a lighthouse and a small cabin, which was supposed to be David's new home. A previous weather officer, Robert, had just completed his one-year tour. David was his replacement. The plan was simple. David stays, collects data, and Robert returns with the ship. But when the team entered the cabin, they were stunned. There was no sign of Robert. His belongings were scattered everywhere. The captain and David suspected he might be in the lighthouse. They rushed over, only to find it barricaded with sharp, pointed wooden stakes, as if to keep something out. After knocking with no response, they forced the door open. Inside, they found a grim-looking man named Gruner. When asked about Robert, Gruner coldly stated, "He's dead, went to the sea, and never came back." The news shocked the captain and David. The captain offered David a chance to return with them, but David, tempted by the large sum of money he'd received for the accurate weather report, refused. "This place doesn't feel safe," the captain warned, handing David a gun for protection. "Take care of yourself." With that, the ship departed, not to return for another year. Left alone, David settled into his cabin. That night, he discovered a diary in a drawer. It belonged to Robert. The pages were filled with notes about the island, including unsettling entries about a mysterious creature. The descriptions were incomplete, but the diary also contained strange sketches of animal-like beings. David dismissed it as the ramblings of a lonely man passing the time. Exhausted from reading, he fell asleep. The next morning, David began his work. Near the sea, he noticed a peculiar arrangement of stones and shells among the rocks. He figured Gruner must have done it and continued his work. Later, looking through his binoculars towards the lighthouse, he saw Gruner with another figure, but it vanished in the blink of an eye. He brushed it off as a trick of the light. That night, a knock came at his door. Thinking it was Gruner, he called out, but there was no reply. As he approached the door, lamp in hand, he heard strange, inhuman sounds. Then he saw it. A grotesque, webbed hand trying to slip under the door. Terror seized him. He scrambled to the basement and hid. Soon, the creature was inside, searching for him. Peeking through a crack, his movement gave him away. The creature lunged at him, trying to grab him. In a desperate act of self-defense, he stabbed it in the eye with a knife. The creature shrieked and fled. The diary was real. Fearfully, David stayed awake the entire night. The next morning, he found strange footprints in the sand leading to the sea. Now he understood why Gruner had fortified the lighthouse. Realizing his cabin was no longer safe, he ran to the lighthouse, begging Gruner to let him in. But Gruner refused. "You should have gone back with the ship," he yelled, throwing water on David to make him leave. David had to protect himself. He boarded up the windows of his cabin, surrounded it with sharpened stakes, and placed a pile of old papers and books outside the door, dousing them with oil to create a fire trap. He then found a rifle and ammunition in an old box, a small glimmer of hope. As night fell, his fear grew. He sat in a corner, gun in hand, his heart pounding. Then he heard them. Peeking out the window, he saw not one, but a horde of the creatures emerging from the water, heading straight for him. They swarmed the cabin, trying to break down the door. David opened fire, taking down a few, but this only enraged the others. He ignited the papers, and the wall of fire sent the creatures retreating into the sea. But the flames had spread to his wooden cabin. He wrapped himself in a blanket and escaped, hiding behind a large rock near the lighthouse as the rain began to fall. By morning, his home was nothing but ashes. His only chance for survival was the lighthouse. He waited for Gruner to emerge for water and followed him. Suddenly, one of the creatures, seemingly with Gruner, attacked David. He managed to subdue it. "Stop! It's my pet!" Gruner shouted. Seizing the opportunity, David made a deal. "Let me in the lighthouse or I'll kill it." Gruner, needing David's food and gunpowder, agreed. The next morning, David woke to find the creature licking his wounded hand, which had miraculously healed. He realized the incredible nature of these beings and wanted to reveal them to the world, imagining the fame and fortune it would bring. But Gruner had no such desires. He considered the island his kingdom.
David learned that Gruner had saved the female creature when it was young and caught in his fishing net. Ever since, she had been his companion, and he had been subjecting her to horrific abuse. The nightly attacks were her kind trying to rescue her. The creatures couldn't attack during the day as sunlight burned their skin. David now desperately wanted to escape the island. That evening, the creatures attacked again. David, paralyzed by fear, was useless while Gruner fought them off all night. The next day, an enraged Gruner forced David to comply. "You will fight or you're out. You'll fetch water, do chores, and stand guard with me." David had no choice. He began to follow Gruner's orders, but he was disgusted by the constant torture of the female creature. As time passed, David learned to fight the creatures. One night, Gruner locked him outside to force him to learn to survive on his own. By morning, David was bloodied but alive. The island had become his prison. He also developed a strange bond with the female creature, whom he named Anaris. He began to understand her loneliness. Then the attacks lessened. David thought they had given up, but Gruner knew better. They're just increasing their numbers. One night, absorbed in a game of chess, they forgot to turn on the lighthouse lamps. The creatures launched a massive assault. Their bullets were nearly gone and Gruner was badly injured. They barely survived until sunrise. A few days later, David spotted a ship. He grabbed a flare gun, but Gruner stopped him, not wanting to be discovered. Anaris attacked Gruner to protect David. The ship sailed away, and David's hope vanished. Gruner continued to abuse both David and Anaris. One day, David gifted Anaris a small toy boat carved from bone. She led him to a hidden cove where a real boat was stashed. Gruner admitted he knew about it. It belonged to shipwreck survivors the creatures had killed. David proposed a plan. Use the diving suit from the boat to retrieve dynamite from the sunken ship. Gruner initially refused, but later agreed with a treacherous plan to leave David to die after he retrieved the explosives. David dived and found the dynamite, but was confronted by two small creatures. In his panic, he shed the heavy suit and swam to the surface with the explosives. They set up a two-layered dynamite trap around the lighthouse. The attack stopped for months, making them think the creatures knew of their plan. To lure them out, David had Anaris scream from the top of the lighthouse. The creatures, hearing her cries and seeing the main gate open, charged into the trap. But when Gruner triggered the detonator, nothing happened. He had disconnected it. As the creatures swarmed the lighthouse, David raced to reconnect the wires. He detonated the first layer, killing many, but more kept coming. Gruner set off the second blast, knocking them both unconscious. When they awoke, Anaris was gone. The ground was littered with dead creatures. David noticed a necklace on one of them and was struck with remorse. He realized they were intelligent beings, not just monsters. From that day on, the attacks ceased, replaced by mournful cries from the shore. One day, David saw small, orphaned creatures by the sea. He created a circle of stones and placed the toy boat inside, a peace offering for Anaris. Hours later, she emerged from the waves, followed by her people. They came in peace, but Gruner, armed and threatened by this new dynamic, arrived. He fired a flare gun, killing a young creature. Enraged, David attacked Gruner. "Stop, Robert! You're not a murderer!" David yelled, using his real name. The name shocked him. The isolation and grief had broken him. Robert, realizing the monster he had become, surrendered to the creatures, who quickly ended his life. A year later, a new weather officer arrived. When asked about his predecessor, David repeated Gruner's old lie. He went to the sea and never came back. The new officer mistook David for Gruner. David didn't correct him. He had accepted the island as his home, just as Robert had. In the distance, Anaris and her family were finally free, living in peace.